Hello, Nottingham Forest Focus. Nottingham Forest will be looking to get back on track in the Premier League when they face Ipswich Town tomorrow at the City Ground. It looked like a game the Reds would be confident winning a couple of weeks ago, but their results have dipped and Ipswich are finding their feet. So maybe that's not the case anymore. Joining me today to give us the opposition view is Joe from the Blue Monday podcast. Joe, really good to have you with us. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for the invite to come and talk about football. Always a pleasure.
Especially as an Ipswich fan. I mean, we'll get into the Premier League, but obviously, we've been in the Championship for 20 odd years with a quick stint in League One. It was the same for you. You must be just in generally loving being back, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's been brilliant, especially the sort of speed of the rise that we've had in the last 2.5 years. It's been a brilliant time to be an Ipswich fan, and we know that it could end at any point, though. So we'll see how it goes from there.
What have you made of the Premier League then? I actually looked back at our prediction show at the start of the season, and 6 of us did predictions. I think 5 of us said Southampton and Leicester would go down. Only 2 of us thought Ipswich would go down because we really liked the business that you've done and the football that you play and love the manager. So how's it been for you in terms of expectation versus reality?
I guess it's probably similar to you guys in regards to such a long break from the top division that it's just a totally different beast when you come back into it after sort of a 20-year absence, that it's so much bigger. And obviously I'm so much older than what I was as well, but I know it's a different ball game it was billed as when the Premier League was launched in 1992, but it really is that now from the Championship. Just the interest level and everything is so high from there. And last time we were in here, we sort of came up, finished 5th, got relegated the next season and weren't seen since. But I guess the thing you notice is just how much the quality of everything has improved. Back then, players were either really quick, they were really strong, or they were really good. The best players were maybe 2 or 3. This year, you play teams who are expected to struggle, and you see these players as a Championship fan, you've never even heard of, and you're like, who on earth is this guy? Like, he's unbelievable. And it's like, oh yeah, he's someone that they signed for 24 million from a French team last year, and it's just totally passed you by. And every team seems to have these guys.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. When I think back to Forest going up, our first game was Newcastle away, and we weren't at all prepared for it. Obviously, we signed a ton of players, and I was like, oh, we've got no chance. We're never going to stay up. But like you say, there's so many good teams. But it looks like you've done well. I mean, it looks like you and correct me if I'm wrong, you've led in quite a few games. You've been in every game. It was only until that Spurs game that you could really make it stick. Was that just part of the players adapting as much as anything, do you think?
Yeah, I guess so. It's just we obviously had to make quite a few signings. So we've been a very well coached, very consistent team for the last 2 years, and almost the team that went up from League One was the team that went through the Championship as well. So whilst there was a couple of new additions, there were at times when there was 11 players on the pitch who'd all been with us in our League One season the year before. So it was, I guess, just these new guys learning new patterns of play, learning to play with each other. But we've really, bar sort of Everton at home and West Ham away, we've really played well in every game, or at least for good parts of every game, or given a good showing of ourselves in nearly every game. But it's just we weren't able to get one over the line. And sort of going back a few games ago, like we had the Brentford game where we're 2-0 up in the first half, and you're sort of saying, "I'll just get to half time at 2-0," and then before you know it's 2-2, and you're not even at half time at that point. And then the Leicester game where we had the sort of dodgy penalty incident, and shortly followed 10 seconds later by a red card, and then the game flips on its head in a game that we're 1-0 up in, should be going 2-0 up in, and could easily have been 3-0 up in. All of a sudden, we're just hanging on and hanging on and hanging on and can't make it to the 96th minute, and then concede. And you think, God bloody hell, it's like November now and we still haven't won a game, even though we've played all right and we weren't really out of touch at the time. And then we look at the next game coming up, Tottenham away, and you don't even think you're going to get anything there. And then all of a sudden you come away with 3 points. And it wasn't just a smash and grab. It was an actual deserved 3 points, good game plan. We were the better side for the big chunks of it. The keeper didn't really have a huge amount to do in the second half. A couple of decent saves he had to make, but nothing of any great substance. And then we went into the Man United game at the weekend and sort of gone from there. So it has been good. I guess the only games where we struggled are ones where we went into with a bit of expectation. Like we had Everton at home. We're like, okay, this is a game where we got a real chance there, and we didn't lay a glove on them, and they beat us 2-0. And then West Ham away, it's like, oh, okay, well, we could beat these. You look at their team, they're not in good form. And then you're sort of 4-1 down, and they're bringing on the guy that was the best player in the Championship, and they've signed for 30 million in the summer, and he's coming on for the last 5 minutes, and you think, oh yeah, this is the difference between the sides here. But generally, it's been really pleasing, and I think when you compare us, ultimately we're going to need to finish above Leicester and Southampton if we want to stay up this year, and I think we're a long way clear of them. I know Leicester are currently above us in the league, and that could change with a new appointment they get in. I don't know who that will be, but they seem to win 2 games very, very fortunately back to back earlier in the season, and have been pretty poor other than that, where we've only lost, I know we've only won 1, but we've only lost 5 of 12 games. If we can keep that sort of level up of not losing half the games, I'm sure we'll pick up more wins and draws.
Did you guys on your podcast worry after the Brentford game that you could go under? Because even in that game, you hit the post late on. It just felt like everything was going against you at that point. Did it feel like a big turning point in the season where it was sink or swim?
Yes and no. I think maybe amongst the fans and amongst the listeners, there was a bit more talk of that. But in the actual pod team, we've been there so many times with Ipswich, even over this brilliant period with McKenna. It really is one game at a time. That they've been very, very quick to just put bad results behind them. Obviously, our first 2 games this year were Liverpool and Man City, so the record went. But in the 2.5 years previously, we hadn't lost back-to-back games at any point in that. So it very much is, you lose a game, you move on to the next one, and you start again. So I never felt that we'd just give up from that point or struggle to get anywhere from it. But I think it was just the worry that we're just not potentially just not good enough for this level, and it is. The recruitment looks like it's been done with one eye on if we were to go back down and try to find a few players that would be able to sell on for big fees. So sort of really pleased with how we've recruited, but it did look at times like, okay, this might be the team that's going to be the best team in the Championship next year rather than one of the weaker teams in the Premier League.
Obviously, our listeners are familiar with McKenna and the work he's done, but can you tell us a bit more about what it is that makes him, I think special is probably, it looks like a fair word. What is it that makes him such a standout manager?
Obviously the fundamentals of football, just tactically he's so good, and the game is adjusted all the time. Sort of, you can see sort of 15, 20 minutes, someone will sit down, then all of a sudden there'll be a slightly different game plan, pressing triggers, all the sort of really geeky stuff that some like and hate. But so, but if you but there's a lot of sort of tactical breakdowns, and you see what we're doing. And when you looked at the sort of Man United game last week, there was all this talk about what formation is he going to play, 3-4-3, this. And whilst they made a massive deal about them being free at the back, we were basically the same formation as them, but a lot more fluid in it. And it's what we've been doing for 2 years previously, or 2.5 years previously. But just to put aside all the football stuff, which everyone can see, I guess what the away fans and the fans of other clubs won't notice is how sort of good a speaker he is, how every press conference you'll learn things from it. Every time he speaks, there's lessons in there. You can see why every player loves him, and there's been no one that's fallen out with him. Everyone throughout the club has a great amount of respect for him. I've sort of known people who have worked at the club, and it's very much a case of previously there's been managers here who want to know about everything and do everything, where if an analyst spots something in training, they've sort of gone to say, oh, I've just noticed this here. And it's almost a bit of a like, why are you telling me this? You know that's how I want to do it. If you think that's what needs to be done, arrange a meeting with the player, go ahead, get it sorted, get that message across to him. And it's very much this, I don't know, sort of this modern workplace where everyone's empowered, but the guy at the top is having the sort of greatest respect from everybody from top to bottom of the club, and everybody's treated well in there. And yeah, it just seems a sort of fantastic leader, fantastic manager, great communicator, very good with the sort of soft skills. When he says something, you can understand what he's trying to say when he's trying to say it, and there's no attempt to sort of belittle the fans with his almost, you wouldn't understand this, so there's no point me saying it. He'll tell you that, oh, I've brought in this guy at centre back because he'll give us better passing angles with a right footer playing left back to play out from the back because their right back likes to jump the press and bits like that. And it's very, very complicated. And some of it goes over my head, quite a long way over my head. But generally, it's really, really interesting. And he's just he's just been so, so good for us.
How worried were you guys in the summer then? Because it looked like he was going from afar. I don't know how close it really was or not, but there was a lot of Chelsea interest, Brighton interest. It seemed like he'd go, and if he'd gone, I don't know, you can't write a season off, obviously, because you're a Premier League team, but it would have been so damaging, I guess, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would have just totally killed any momentum we went up with. And I think would have been an absolute certainty to get relegated from that point, because we hadn't done any recruitment at this point. We still had a huge amount that we were trying to do. And without him here, the players they were good League One players, but they were sort of maybe bottom end Championship players that he's turned into top end Championship players. And I think just the belief, the confidence, the goodwill, everything would have just been sucked out of the club in one hit, and it would have been, just a devastating blow. And it's just so good for Ipswich fans that he's able to stay for what will probably be 1 year. I imagine it would be just this year, but we don't know. But yeah, it would have really, really killed everything that has been built over the last 2.5 years had he gone this summer. And from what I think most people realise, he was very, very close to doing so. And it took a huge amount from the club, and for him to listen to that, and probably helped him get the squad he wanted more in the transfer market with it as well. But there's no one better to spend that money and build the squad he has and showcase the talent that we've bought over the summer as well. So it's all worked out brilliantly so far.
It's been a bit of a debate among our fans about, how we got to the Premier League. Some people say it's all Steve Cooper, others will say it's more of, the ownership and, John Moss at Wembley or whatever. I don't know. But how much of the last 2 years is down to McKenna? Because I think you had a change of ownership, didn't you? You're not owned by Marcus Evans anymore, are you?
No, we were bought out by an American pension fund, and Mark Ashton, who'd previously been the CEO at Bristol City, sort of must have, I think, helped with their bid, helped their takeover. Was installed as CEO here, so they've come in and they've been brilliant. But they've given him everything that he's asked for, and he's earned it by delivering results on the pitch. So effectively, we were taken over. Paul Cook had recently been appointed manager, and he lasted sort of up until sort of like Christmas of the first season, and we'd spent a good chunk of money. Well, in League One standards, a good chunk of money. Probably it wouldn't have even paid for our cheapest signing. That one signing this year would have not been in that. But the ownership have got everything. The ownership have got everything right. They've invested in the ground, invested in the community, rebuilt the sort of foundation which had been sort of dying in, and previously we'd sort of even just pulled it at certain points in the past. So they've done brilliantly, and I think to recruit and retain Kieran McKenna, they've needed to, because he wanted to set us up as a Premier League club while we were in League One. So staffing levels, facilities, analysts, new pitches. Like there was something like £2 million spent on pitches at the training ground while we were still in League One, moving between League One and Championship. And so it is sort of a many-headed beast that has got us here. But obviously the winning matches of football is the hardest thing, and Kieran McKenna is the guy that's done that. So whilst they've done incredibly well to recruit him and retain him, without him, we'd probably be pushing in the Championship now. We'd have established ourselves to maybe what we were sort of 20 years ago, as opposed to what we were 25 years ago.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a few parallels listening to you then between you and us. Like our owner we got promoted to the Premier League before we got the £2.5 million pitch and loads of money pumped into the ground. But I guess you have to. The Premier League is mental. It's just like a behemoth, I guess, that you don't even appreciate until you get there. I'll ask you more about your predicted 11, pick your brain about a couple of Ipswich players. But just before that, a word for our sponsors, the Trent Navigation. As I've been saying this week, straight after the game is the Beatles gig. I'll play a clip and see what Joe makes of it on the other side. It's not quite a Beatles gig, but it should be a good one. And the entry is free, so nothing to lose there. Here we go. Beatles dubstep, Joe? Is that big in Ipswich?
I haven't seen it, but I'm a big Beatles fan, so it wasn't a long enough clip to know whether it was sort of sacrilege or a great turn of it yet. So I'll have to see how it goes in a longer form.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure it'll be good. They do have loads of good gigs at the Nav after the game. And like I say, entry's free. So get down straight afterwards. Hopefully, from our point of view, we're celebrating a win. So it should be a good one. Are you able to run us through, it doesn't have to be exactly accurate, but a rough predicted 11 for what you think it will be from Ipswich on Saturday?
Yeah. So it will be R.O. Muric in goal. Right back will be Axel Tuanzebe, but in sort of like a hybrid right back, centre back role. Darragh O'Shea will be the right sided of, or the middle of the three, or the right side of the two. And then there's a choice between sort of Cameron Burgess on the left. He's played the last 5 or 6 games. Jacob Greaves has been injured. Jacob Greaves is back fit now, but Burgess has done well. So that's probably a coin toss there. Left back would be Leif Davies. Central midfield would be Sam Morsey and most likely Jens Kajustas alongside him. The alternative there is Calvin Phillips, who's potentially recovering from a knock. Right wing will either be Wes Burns or Ben Johnson, depending on Ben Johnson's fitness. It'll be Amari Hutchison playing in the 10 role. Sammy Smolix will likely get the start next to him on the left, and then it will be Liam Delap up front.
Let me ask you about a few of those names then. Some really interesting ones in there. Aaron Muric, I don't always ask about the opposition goalkeeper, but he had a loan spell with us that was particularly stinking earlier in his career. And I think Forest fans have kind of assumed that he's rubbish. I actually think he looks quite decent, but he's got a mistake in him. What have you made of him in an Ipswich shirt?
Yeah, I guess you summed it up. Very decent, but with a mistake in him. He's a great shot stopper, and we haven't had a keeper in a long time that commands his box as well as he does. He comes out and claims a huge amounts of crosses, and which massively relieves the pressure over the defence, and is what we've needed in away games. But then he will just pass the ball straight to the opposition, or let one through his hands, or come out for a cross and get nowhere near it. And it's just, I guess, if you can iron those mistakes out of your game, he's going to be one of the top goalkeepers in the Premier League. But at the moment, when it's sort of one big mistake every 3 or 4 games, it's probably worth it for a side like us at the bottom of the league, because when he can come out and claim 10 crosses in a game, that what that does for you is just so vital. But when it goes wrong, like in Brentford away in the last minute when he lets one through his hands and you lose the game 4-3, it's sort of a sucker punch. And he started really poorly. His first game was away at Man City, and he passed the ball to them to go 2-1 up, and then 10 seconds later comes flying out of his goal and gets beaten. And he's had a bit of a rough time of it from the Ipswich fans, from a portion of the Ipswich fan base who hasn't really got over that. And he does look a bit dodgy at times, so it's difficult. But I think what's more difficult is that we had a keeper who was excellent with his feet last year, and I think it's very, very different being excellent with your feet in the Championship as being excellent with your feet in the Premier League, because it's just so much more difficult. But we haven't seen him struggle in the Premier League to then be replaced. It's just been the straight replacement.
Another player I want to ask about is Leif Davies. He looks so attacking. I don't know. It sounds like from what you were saying, they basically play 3 at the back in a way. And does Davies does he stay high all game? Does he do much defending or not?
Yeah, I think we just defend in the numbers that attack against us, if that makes sense. So sort of nominally it's a back 4, but you see all these teams that will play 5 up front effectively across the line. And when they're playing 5 up front, the guy playing right wing, whether that be Wes Burns or Ben Johnson, will drop back to be a right back. Leif Davies will be a left back, and it'll be a there. But they are also our 2 furthest players forward. I think in the Man United game, the average positions they were higher than Liam Delap on the pitch, the 2 sort of nominal wing backs. But it's a very complicated role, because it is a real sort of left back, left wing hybrid, and it works from there. But yeah, he's a big attacking threat for us. Got an unbelievable engine, great left foot, and sort of dangerous from set pieces and in play. But yeah, is technically a left back.
Excuse me. How do you rate your midfield? Because I was just going to ask you about Hutchinson, but then I watched the game on Sunday, and like Sam Morsey, he wasn't a player that I recognise. He looks a different player. I don't know if that's fair or not. Has he been a player transformed? Do you think you've got a Premier League quality midfield in general with him in there, with Hutchinson and is he Dutch? The other guy, I can't remember his name.
Swedish, yeah.
Swedish, apologies, yeah.
Yeah. Well, Sam Morsey, he dropped down to us in League One. I don't think he particularly wanted to leave Middlesbrough, and it was a bit of a, you're going, and I wouldn't say he had a bit of a sulk on when he first joined, but he wasn't there. But since Kieran McKenna came in, he was just the best player on the pitch in League One every week. And it was a bit like, can he just carry this forward? Because he's obviously lower league battling midfielder generally. He hasn't spent much of his time at the top end of even the Championship, let alone any higher than that. And then in the Championship last year, he was just superb. He's so lean, so professional, so fit now that he's obviously extending his career out as best he can. And yes, generally he's stepped up pretty well in the Premier League. And you just think, how on earth is this guy who was sold back into League One at age 30 now playing in the Premier League at 33 and putting in really, really good performances each week? When you saw last week, he just sort of ran all over Casemiro and Christian Eriksen. And I know people say, oh yeah, their legs are gone, but they're younger than he is. He's older than both of them. And he's been superb, a brilliant captain, a brilliant leader. And yeah, just an absolute revelation. It's just such a shame he's 33 rather than 28, because you sort of wonder how much longer you can keep going. But no, he's been great. Jens Kajusta's on loan from Napoli, and he's done well. He's started the last 2 games, but Calvin Phillips has obviously been a big signing. He's done okay, not brilliantly, but he's been unavailable a bit too much, where he looked like he was just getting back into things before the Leicester game. Played really well during the Leicester game, and then ends up sort of getting sent off in a sort of mad instant, and then suspended for the Tottenham game. Then he's not fit again for the game on Sunday against Man United, and he just needs to get a run of games in him. But if he can do, then yeah, we've got a good enough midfield, but we're a little bit light there if he's not fit.
I've got to ask you about Delap. We've been discussing him on our podcast a couple of times this season. We've said we'd love to sign him, which I guess is really annoying for you because you've only just bought him and it feels a bit disrespectful. But I guess a lot of fans are going to say something like that when you see what he can do. Has he surprised you guys with his quality? Because he didn't tear the Championship apart or anything, did he?
No. He did score against us at the back end of last season for Hull, but I think that was only his like 7th or 8th goal of the season. And it's funny because Kieran McKenna had mentioned him by name when we played against Hull at the start of the season. He was talking about how he'd brought George Edmondson into the team to replace Cameron Burgess because in Lee and Delap they've got an explosive forward and we needed someone to be able to deal with that supreme physicality. And generally, when McKenna talks about someone like that, it means they're probably on our radar, and because he doesn't do it very often. And then we signed him in the summer, and I think that was probably the one where it felt like there was maybe a little bit of a Man City tax in that we might have slightly overpaid by a couple of million for him because it was 15 plus 5 in add-ons. And I thought maybe 12 was probably a bit fairer, and we'd be looking to sign another striker to compete with him. And we couldn't get the other striker over the line, and he's been just unbelievable, just so good, so physical, so fast, so strong. Obviously, it helps when you pop up with 6 goals when some of them are flying in from outside the box. But yeah, he is just, I know, sort of a throwback, isn't he? He's just a total throwback to it. He just loves to rough up defenders. But he's good enough that he can sort of stand up and go against them and hold the ball up. But also he's got that pace, and that he'll just, if a defender gets too tight for him, he's just gone and he'll be past them and flying up the pitch. Yeah, and has been so good. And he's been linked with Chelsea already, Man City. Talk about him going back there, but I think he will sort of go straight from us back into a big club. It's just at what point he'll go there, because he's got something that just incredible physicality, and he just hits the ball so hard when he gets a chance to shoot.
Yeah. You don't know if Man City have got a buyback clause or anything, do you?
Yeah, well, there's talk they've got a buyback, and I think in the Express or something was reported that it was 30 million buyback, but they're not interested in it at the moment, where it's like, well, if you could get him back for 30 million, you would just do that now because he's probably worth double that already. So from what I gather from speaking to people around the club, but no one will sort of give you anything. But it seems to me it's more like a matching rights clause that they can get back. Yeah. So if we were to accept a bid from someone else, they'd be able to have the same bid accepted with a 20% discount because of the 20% of the profit discount because of the sell on. So I think if there was a straight buyback, it would be pretty obvious one exists, because it would be being taken up almost straight away. Because especially with Man City, I wouldn't say struggling. Obviously, they've lost sort of 5 in a bounce and draw midweek, but they have no backup for Erling Haaland in that striker's role, and you could have he'd be good enough to play that role in that squad now as a relief for him for 10, 15 minutes at the end of games already. So yeah, if that buyback exists, we'll know about it on January the 1st.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. I mean, we were saying on Monday we think he's probably already worth 40 million and only going to rise the way he's playing. He looks brilliant, and it certainly worries us on Saturday. What about from Ipswich point of view? Anyone from Forest who would worry you? From what I don't know how much you've seen of us, but anyone that you think could be a big threat?
Well, sort of threat-wise, obviously Chris Wood is a guy popping up with the goals, isn't he, at the moment? And he had a loan spell at Ipswich a few years ago and didn't really go brilliantly. It was okay, but by the time he got fit, ended up getting called back to Leicester. So to see him doing so well in the Premier League is great for him. But it's just, I guess, it's the wingers as well. Langer and Hudson-Odoi have been really, really good when I've seen Forest. I haven't watched your last couple of games, which you've obviously lost, but there. And then the two centre halves have been imperious when I've watched. But again, I haven't watched your last two games, so I don't know if things have changed over that period. But sort of Murillo and Milenkovic have just been so strong and so physical and good on the ball. And you think these are the sort of players where you think, who are these guys? I've not really heard of them. And you look and think, oh yeah, they're big signings. They're built like brick outhouses. They're quality on the ball. And you just think, how do these players even exist?
Yeah, they have been brilliant. I think the problems have been in front of them the last two games. Obviously, we're hoping Gibbs White or Elliot Anderson are fit to face you. Just on the wingers, can you get in behind? I suppose it's obvious. Can you get in behind Leif Davies or not? Have teams managed to do that effectively all season or not?
Yeah, he started the season. He struggled in his first couple of games, and there's a lot of talk. Oh, he's not going to cut it in the Premier League defensively. It's like, yeah, but he's been up against like Mo Salah and Savinho. It's quite difficult for any defender to cut it there. And he got beaten by Salah for a goal and gave away a penalty against Savinho. But he caused them problems going the other way. So we do play a high risk, high reward game where it's sort of man to man marking all over the pitch. So yeah, there will be room to get in behind, and it will be up to us to make sure that the rest of the team functions properly. So if he does go, there is somebody covering him behind. And generally, we don't have those periods where we're totally caught out. Obviously, you see the goal that Man United scored at the weekend where he's sort of the other side of him. But the midfielder does get across. He just makes a bad decision to go to ground as opposed to sort of hold him up. And Leif Davies would have had time to sort of recover and hold him up from there. But that was just bad decision making at that point from Jens Koister. So it's that there will be room, but by sort of trying to sit in that room, you'll be leaving us space the other way. So it's a case of sort of who can hold their nerve.
Just lastly, then, how are you viewing the game? Especially now you've got 4 points in the last two. We've lost the last two. Do you see it as an opportunity, to get something from the match at least?
Well, I think every game we feel is an opportunity to get something from it. If you think we've gone to Tottenham and won 2 weeks ago and drawn with Man United, we've been to Brighton and got a point earlier in the season. Every game we'll go to and we'll be, like I said, we're not going to roll over anywhere, and we'll have a game plan and we'll cause you some problems. And it's just, but for us to win the game, everything needs to go right for us. Where for you, if you can sort of put together an 8 out of 10 performance, you're probably going to have too much for us in a number of ways. But it's just, if your performance levels drop to a 6 or 7 out of 10, then we've got a chance of pushing you. But it's, every game we're going to be the underdog this year, especially away from home. But no, I don't think we've got anything. We won't play like we've got anything to fear anywhere. And I think the fans will turn up, not, I wouldn't say expectantly to get anything, but with a thought that we can get something. And if you're not on your game and well organised, and then you'll need to be to get it against us. Otherwise, it's just hoping that the magic players don't pull out magic things, isn't it?
Do you think you'll stay up? Because obviously, hand on heart, we've been in that relegation battle the last 2 years, and it's pretty awful. This year, hopefully, touch wood, we're not. We look like we're doing it a bit better. But we was discussing this today. Like Leicester and Southampton look pretty bad, subject to managerial changes. And then we were saying, oh, Ipswich look really good. They're really hard to beat. They've got good players. But then you look at Wolves and you think, oh, they've got better fixtures, and Cooney's really good. And Everton, by hook or by crook, despite looking rubbish in every game, seem to get points from somewhere. There's, like you were saying at the top of the show, the other teams are really good. I mean, deep down, do you think you'll stay up or not?
I do, yeah, and I think maybe it's just sort of optimism and needing that as a fan to have it. But I don't think we will lose too many. Well, we will lose lots of games, but I don't think we just lose that many games where we shouldn't lose them. And those points we pick up here and there will help. And we've got goals in the team, which is massive when you're trying to stay up. But it is just, like I say, it's incredibly difficult. I think we're a better team than Leicester. I think we're a better team than Southampton. So it's just a case of hoping one of those others we can get ahead of and stay ahead of them. But yeah, it's going to be incredibly difficult. We've got a run of fixtures coming up, because I think there's been a lot of talk about how tough Wolves' run of fixtures has been, but I think we've played all the same teams as they have over the sort of same period, but we've now got this period now where we've got to play sort of Wolves away, Forest away, which at the start of the season you'd probably been seen as a team who'd be in the battle with us, but hasn't turned out to be the case. We've got Crystal Palace at home next week, Bournemouth at home. And so it's a little bit like, yeah, probably in the next 5 or 6 games, if we can be winning 2 or 3 of them, which we've got every chance of being able to, then we're going to be in a really good position. But over the last 2 seasons, we got promoted out of League One and we needed 98 points to get promoted. Sheffield Wednesday came third on 96. We got 96 points last season, and I think Leeds came third with 90, but they lost on the last day when they were sort of out of it. So I just hope it's not another season where we need to get a ridiculous amount of points to stay up. I don't want to be needing to get 39 points to stay up this year, where 34 is normally enough. And obviously the last season, the promoted teams being so poor has made it very, very difficult for the teams that have come up this year, because it means that teams like yourself have now you're in your 3rd year in the Premier League with 5 transfer windows behind you, where normally there might be one team who's come up and gone down, but every team, knowing obviously you had your financial problems which led to points deductions, but every team almost from January last year was able to build for this season, because the bottom 3 was so far adrift and so poor that it was the only way that another team was going to get relegated last year was a ridiculous points deduction, and you and Everton were able to have yours and still stay up relatively comfortably, weren't you?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do hope you stay up. Forest fans have got a bit of a bugbear about Luton. Everyone was saying they were plucky, and we just thought they were crap, and found their fans quite annoying and up their own arses, really. So Ipswich have looked much better than Luton, and I do hope you stay up and think you can. It just depends on maybe Wolves and Everton. Someone gets sucked into it, don't they? I think if you can finish 1 place above Wolves or Everton, I think you stay up, I guess. So yeah, hope you do.
Cheers.
Right. If people have enjoyed that, do us a favour. Hit like on the video. Do subscribe. You can become a channel member. You can sign up for Patreon. And, of course, give us a lovely review on iTunes or Spotify. If people want to listen to you guys post-match, get your verdict on what you make of the game, where can they find more of you, Joe?
Yeah, just Blue Monday, ITFC. So YouTube, iTunes, the normal place, or Apple Podcasts as it is. But we go live on YouTube at 8 o'clock. So depending on how the result goes, normally if we lose, we have more of the away fans turn up at that point there. So that's sort of Sunday, 8 p.m. on those. But yeah, we're everywhere as Blue Monday ITFC. So
excellent. Well, we'll be live on Saturday at about 8 p.m. I'm going to the game, taking my daughter, so we'll do our post-match show a bit later, but hopefully people will catch us for that. And yeah, have a good day, everyone. Thank you very much to Joe. If we don't see you on Saturday, then we shall see you soon.